Well, this is fun. One of our very last ABCD Unconference sessions, at least of this year. I'm grateful that the organizers invited me to contribute and participate. I have lots of assets and lots of fun things that I like to do. One of them is neighboring, hyper-local neighboring. There was already a session yesterday by the neighborhood movement based in Wichita, Kansas in the United States. They were talking about neighborly things. It's a popular topic in ABCD circles. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I have a little bit of housekeeping that I need to do because all sessions need to, I'm not assuming that you've been to any unconference sessions or that you are familiar with kind of the unconference etiquette and guidelines. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to share my screen and we're going to walk through just a few things together. So let me do that and I'll kind of bounce back and forth between a couple little things. You are in the sweet art of neighboring, borrowing sugar optional, kind of cheeky that way because the classic, hey neighbor, do you have a cup of sugar I can borrow? In the way that I like to talk about neighboring, that is optional, although sometimes actually practical is a good way to get to know your fellow neighbors. So you're with me, Joel Zaslofsky, and friends, that's you, fellow participants. We're going to be doing this all together and having a good time. So you all seem to have some etiquette down. I'm noticing pretty much everybody is muted. By default, you're muted. Remain muted unless you're speaking. They can get some background noise. Accessibility for our real-time participants and also people who are coming after us, who are going to be watching the recording, is really important. Video as well. Faces are great. I love to see faces. You don't have to have your video on, but try to avoid going back and forth and toggling on and off as much as possible. Allison, who shows up as ABCD Unconference in Zoom as a name, will help with some tech support. I can as well. If you're having some issues with Zoom or otherwise, we're going to be doing a number of breakout rooms. You can let us both know. We'll get you the tech support that you need. And of course, these sessions are recorded. So if you don't want your face to be seen when you're talking, when Zoom spotlights you, just turn your video off. Actually, before we get started, there's one more thing that I'd like to do. I do a bit of a different land acknowledgement than other people do. So I just wanted to say, as we prepare to engage in conversation with each other, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of the traditional stewards of the land, whatever land you're on. We will acknowledge the traditional custodians wherever we are and recognize their continuing connection to land, water, and culture. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. All right, there's still some more people coming in. All right, we're almost done with the housekeeping piece, and then we get to the fun neighboring piece. Yay. I'm going to share my screen again. So just in the chat, real quick, we'll do a little intro. For those of you who have been in other sessions, this is familiar. For others who haven't, you're like, oh, cool, an opportunity to write things in the chat. So here's what I'd like you to do. Share your name in the chat if it's different than what Zoom shows. If your name is Jess Pop, for example, and your name in Zoom is Jess Pop, then you can skip that part, where you are in the world. And if you like, you can acknowledge the traditional stewards, custodians of the land you're currently on. So let's just take a moment and see, where is everybody? Who is everybody? Okay, I see we have people from Pennsylvania in the United States, Lincoln, Nebraska in the US, French Pyrenees. Ooh, that's fun. At least when you're here in the United States, that's fun. I'm sure it is where you are as well. Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. We have Cleveland, Ohio, USA. Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. Mickey, ooh, that's a fun one. Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the oh boy, I need help my pronunciation. Also known as Nova Scotia, Canada. Northbrook, Illinois in the United States, South Africa. Another Chicago, Illinois person. All right, thank you for doing that, everybody. Obviously, this is a global conference, and we are globally represented in a lot of cool ways. Thank you to those of you who this is your early morning or your late evening. I think it's really fun that we get to do all this together. And some people wake up early or stay up late. I'm grateful for you carving out a little slice of your time. All right, as I told you, this is being recorded. We're also going to be doing a group photo at the end. You're welcome to turn your camera off for that, or this is Unconference. If you decide to leave before that, that's totally cool as well. You can vote with your feet. If this isn't working for you at any point in time, just leave. No judgment. No one will think they did anything wrong. That's the nature of an Unconference. I'm still a little bit unclear about the harvesting piece. For those of you who just joined, we're still looking for someone who can actively harvest. I'm going to take a link here and share it in the chat one more time to see if anyone is able to, maybe not exclusively, but group harvesting. There's a document to do it. What does it mean to actively harvest is in the chat. Someone who will capture either in words, in images, the essence, the stories, the ideas that we're about to share together. It doesn't have to be a fancy thing. This is not a formal role. This is pretty informal, just capturing a couple of thoughts, either yours or others that you interact with, or jotting down a little picture that illustrates something that we said or that we've shared. All right. So I'm just going to briefly explain how this is going to work. This full session is 90 minutes long. We're 10 minutes into it, so we've got another 80 minutes left. We're going to have 3 rounds of conversation, mostly in breakout groups for up to about 15 minutes each. I've designed this to be highly interactive. So everyone here is encouraged to be an active participant instead of a passive attendee. If you can only listen in, if you're only curious, that's fine. But like I said, I've designed this to be interactive. And if that doesn't work for you, that's okay. But just know the nature of this. On to neighboring. I'll start with a quote, which was in the event description on the ABCD Unconference website. A guy named Bob Moorehead once said, "We have been to the moon and back, but have trouble crossing the street to meet a new neighbor." I've been that person before. Fortunately, I've changed a little bit, at least as far as my neighboring goes. But other people have asked me, I'm here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, United States area. And as I neighbor and I try to neighbor in different ways, people are like, what's the point? I'm just isolated and disconnected. That's just the way that humans are now. It's one way to look at things. I think ABCD would, at least for me, just kind of scoff at that notion that it's not worth it, that the only people that we can do life with are family and friends or work acquaintances. Well, what about the people who are literally closest to us? Proximity. We're going to look around the global landscape of neighbor-based ABC and initiatives a bit in this session and discuss questions like, what if the next job you wanted, family support you needed, or personal health ally is just a neighbor away? What becomes possible when a short walk down the block unlocks fulfillment, safety, or impact the internet can never provide? Then finally, what if the word neighbor meant more than just the people living next door? Yeah, good prompts. At least I hope you think so. Now, here's one more for you. I'm going to put this in the chat. We're going to take about 30 seconds. Think this one through. What I just put in the chat was, what was a recent gift you gave to a neighbor? Doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a physical gift. It could be emotional validation. It could be spiritual comfort, whatever it may happen to be. Let's take 30 seconds. And if you have something to share in the chat, just type something in. What was a recent gift you gave to a neighbor? Ooh, lots of food. A home-cooked meal, zucchini from a garden, fruit from a tree, passion fruit. A going away block party. Watered plants on vacation. You're typing so fast, I can't keep up with you, everyone. This is wonderful to see. I'm not going to be able to say everything that's shared in there, but been on a call to take care of children in my neighbor whose baby is due soon. Great. I appreciate that. Welcome to those of you who are just joining. There's a prompt in the chat about a gift. What gift have we recently given to a neighbor? Okay, now, as for this conversation itself, you're all here, so you're all curious about neighboring or what it means to be a neighbor. There's different definitions of it. I'm not going to try to define it for you. If it's the people who are within, the 8 closest doors to you, like the neighborhood movement talks about, that's great. If it's people who are on your block, if you even have that concept where you are, or street or road or cul-de-sac, the people who are closest to you in physical proximity, that's who I consider my neighbors. That's kind of our working definition. Why is it important in our 21st century era where so much is online? We can have so much of what we need without necessarily involving our neighbors. That's true. I'll just share a brief little story of my own. Then we're going to get into breakout rooms and share stories with each other as kind of our first prompt. And I know I'm doing a lot of talking initially. Don't worry, I'll be doing a lot less talking very soon, and it'll be all about us and sharing things together. So where I am here you put a pin right in the center of North America, that's where I am, if that gives people an idea. I grew up on a street in St. Paul, Minnesota in the United States with an elderly couple right across, Frank and Mildred. Frank invited me in, and he would take me down to the basement and show his work table, and my brother and I would get curious about, what does that saw do, or why do you have 5 different hammers? And he would teach us some things about being handy and using tools. His wife Mildred was just so wonderful. We would play cards with her. There was that intergenerational piece, which I really appreciated. 3 doors down, Mickey Mintzberg, he gave me my first job. I worked in the warehouse of a lighting company. And in the summertime, my neighbor, Mickey, gave me my first job. I didn't realize it at the time, but so much of what I enjoyed about life was just based on the people who were on the street that I lived in. Now, I graduated from university. After that, I had no local community. I really had no desire to neighbor for about 10 years, from about the age of 21 through the age of 31. I didn't even have enough awareness to know what I was missing from my youth. Like, this whole concept of being a neighbor just kind of evaporated from my mind. And it took my wife getting pregnant with our first son to make me reorient myself to, okay, I'm now going to have this small child in my home, in this neighborhood. What does he need? Can I enlist the help of my neighbors? Maybe I can't do something, or I won't have something. And it started from what can I get from people, and quickly turned into, what can I give? My overarching theme in life is bringing people together. I do that in my local neighborhood association. There's a hyper-local block style initiative that I'm helping to create here where I am, kind of similar to, if those of you know, in Edmonton, Abundant Community Edmonton, someone like Howard Lawrence and some other folks. There are other examples of block-based, neighbor-based ABCD initiatives like Be Well in the Denver, Aurora area. I've heard about awesome ones in Utrecht, in the Netherlands, in Brisbane, Australia, all across the world. So there's a little bit of my backstory. Janice says, I grew up next to an elderly couple called Frank and Millie. Oh, that's fun, Janice. Frank's such a good name. I actually wanted to name my first son Frank. We called him Grant instead. Still a good name. Okay, so let's get to us. Let's get into groups. I'm going to be splitting you up into groups of, how many people we have? We have 18 people. Let's split up into groups of 4, because 2 of us will stay back here. That'll make it really clean. I'm going to be splitting us up into groups of 4 and putting you into randomly assigned breakout rooms for 15 minutes. And it's going to be based around a prompt, which I'll share in the chat in a moment. So it's about, actually, I'll just share it right now. And this will follow you into your breakout room. So you don't have to write this down or copy and paste it or anything. So the prompt is, for those of you who can't see the chat for some reason, share a story. When have you seen neighbors come together to improve? There are 7 core tenets if you go to the Abundant Community, or the Green Book, as some of us call it in other circles: local health, safety, economics, the environment, food production, raising children, or general care. And then, if you want to pick one of those and share a story, what did it look like? What did it sound like? What did it feel like when you saw neighbors come together to improve their lives together? Before we go into breakout rooms, I'm going to give everybody 1 minute of silence to either jot down a couple of notes on a piece of paper, or just kind of think in your head, what is the story that I want to share with the people who I'm about to be talking with? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to hit the virtual pause button for 1 minute, and then we'll go into breakout rooms and share stories. So some of you will be in rooms of 3, some of you will be in rooms of 4. However many people are there is the right number of people. Enjoy. I'm about to open the rooms and have some story time, everybody. Okay. This is still one of my favorite things about Zoom, when everybody comes back from breakout rooms and it's just all these pictures of awesome humans popping into the main room all together. That's fun. I hope you all enjoy it too. Well, let's do a quick share. Popcorn style. And when I say popcorn style, I mean, if something pops into your head, just share it. Unmute yourself. Or if you prefer to type something in the chat, you can do it that way as well. Let's take a few minutes, popcorn style, to share what story did you hear that will be memorable to you beyond today.
The power of a community garden.
In what way, Carol?
That it brings people together to nourish themselves, not just with the food, but with the culture and the kind of the pleasure of nature and being with other people.
Yeah.
And it carries on for years and years.
I heard a story about the power of intergenerational conversation and younger generation coming together to change a culture and to change hearts and minds of elders in a community.
Thanks, JP. Who else heard a story that you might be telling someone else about? Oh, I went to this ABCD Unconference and wow. Debbie?
Yeah, I heard a story that reminded me of my own experience. There are people who move into neighborhoods who are not being welcomed, who are being harassed, and the importance of organizing and connecting neighbors to help welcome and protect people who are having these kinds of experiences with their neighbors or some of their neighbors.
We can probably do 1 or 2 more if someone feels called to point out something. Hope?
Nice pickup there, Joel. So one of the ladies was talking about all the wonderful projects that she had done in her neighborhood, and they were really inspiring and cool. But the message that I think she came to the conclusion, I certainly did, is that just keeping it simple is the best way to go. Just keeping it real simple and small, and not trying to get too far ahead of yourself and then like burn yourself out and then it dies. So I knew that already, but it was nice to hear another story, because I am starting a new project, and you know, you have all these wishes and dreams about how you can build community in your neighborhood, and you're trying to do big, and I keep like, oh, just do a coffee. Yeah, so that's what I learned.
Great. Well, thanks for that, everybody. I obviously don't get to go in the session, so I appreciate our harvesters who are working in our shared Google Doc, and this verbal recap's really nice too. Vanessa, Hillary, welcome to you too. I know you just joined us. We're about to go on to another, well, actually 2 prompts. We're going to go back into breakout rooms for 15 minutes again, based on 2 different prompts this time. You could choose one of 2, or if you have time in your small group, you can do both. Be as ambitious or as simple and slow as you feel like you want to be. So let's see. I'm going to put these in the chat because that'll probably be the easiest. And just like the first time around, I'm going to give us all 1 minute of silence to think about these, because I didn't give you these in advance. This surprise ABCD prompt, you get to look at these 2, and we'll do it. We will be in groups of 3 to 4 for about 15 minutes. Look at those 2 and think about what you care to share when it comes to how do you currently contribute to a neighborly spirit on your street, or if you live on a block or a cul-de-sac, apartment building, you know, wherever you live. The second one is describing your ideal street, block, cul-de-sac, apartment building, wherever it is to live on. What are you doing with these neighbors? How do these activities make you feel? What's the sensory experience that you're having? So I'm going to be silent for 45 seconds, and then we'll go into breakout rooms again and talk about those. All right. Here we are again. Well, let's do a quick little real-time harvest recap. I'm going to put a link in the Zoom chat as well. For those of you who didn't see it the first time or might have joined after the first time it was shared, we're just doing a collaborative harvest, gathering the ideas, stories in this document. If you have that Google Doc up, there's on the second page where we've got the 2 questions, the 2 prompts for the breakout rooms. Feel free to type some things in there. We're going to take a few minutes to do what we did after the first question, which is just kind of popcorn style. If something pops into your mind, let's share with the rest of the group. What are the themes? What are the common threads that weave themselves through the stories and ideas you've heard so far?
I don't think in our group, we shared both of the questions, but then the common theme that I gathered was mutual respect. You know, wherever we live, how do we claim that mutual respect, or how do we bring in that mutual respect of just neighbors living together and it can, you know, we are coming from different ethnic, whatever it is, but how do we have that mutual respect for each other?
Yeah. Anyone else who wants to pull on a thread? You see something that you see a theme. Maybe people are talking about the same thing, perhaps in different words, maybe in a different context, but it's pointing back to something fundamental like respect.
Oops.
Janice,
I
go ahead.
noticed just
Debbie, you're next.
like, yeah, not being afraid to talk to people, like initiating conversations and like putting yourself in situations where you can initiate conversations, and even if you've seen somebody for a long time, like not being afraid to talk to them, even if you haven't in years, like coming up with ways to talk.
Thanks, Janice.
Yeah, I have a couple. One, we didn't call it this, but I think you could call it this, like props for connecting with people. Like dogs are great prop, because when people are walking their dogs, it's just a very easy way to sort of connect. The dogs connect and then the people connect. Growing food and sharing, extra food, anything that lets you interact with a neighbor, even just in a very minimal way, can be very powerful. And then the other thing that came up is the idea of kind of shifting activities from your backyard to your front yard, including growing things. Just being out in the front yard, you're much more likely to bump into somebody, to, a group of 2 or 3 neighbors are talking, and then another neighbor might feel comfortable just kind of stopping in and meeting, and then neighbors introduce each other. So those 2 things, props and kind of shifting to the front yard, the porch, whatever, if you have a porch, or just putting your chairs out in the front yard.
That's great. I have often used my children and my dogs as props for neighboring. I like that word, props. They're a little bit more active in the interaction, but that's good. I mean, they are
living props.
Yes. And depending on our context, doing front yard neighboring instead of doing things in the backyard, that also applies. I've heard other people talk about lobby neighboring. If you live in an apartment building, if you're going to read a book, instead of reading it in your apartment, why not go down to the lobby? And as people walk by, you can talk to them, or they can talk to you. Just making yourself visible and available can be done in any kind of neighboring context.
Right. I heard about a couple of challenges. So I guess JP has a child now, who's a good prop, but he was pointing out that people are maybe a little more hesitant to talk to a male walking down the street, and so being a group of largely women, I think that's something to be aware of. And then I heard from Hope that maybe she can correct me, but if you live in a mixed housing area, like apartments and single family dwellings, that might make it a little harder to connect. And then we were all sharing our kind of dread of the dark winter cold days, when it makes it harder to be outside and connect with people.
Yeah, depending on where you are, that's true. I'm at the 45th degree latitude north in Minnesota, in the United States, and winter's real. People hibernate from about mid-November through early April, and you really don't see people out very much. So it's harder.
Except for shoveling.
Yes. I've seen some wonderful neighboring done, shoveling people's snow, walkways, driveways. Well, thanks everyone. Now I've noticed some people coming and going, which is great. That's the design of an unconference. We're going to get into a group prompt here. We're not going to go into breakout rooms again. We'll stay together. This could also be a good time. In the 2 breakout rooms that you've been in, you might have made a bit of a connection with someone who you didn't even know existed before today, or who you've seen and you think, you're really neat. I think maybe we should talk more. So this could be a good opportunity to use the Zoom chat and send a private message to someone and share contact information, email addresses, WhatsApp numbers, whatever might be relevant. I want this connection that we're having here. Imagine the people who are here virtually around the world as your virtual neighbors. If you find someone and you're interested in talking to them more, feel free to use this as an opportunity to private message someone and say, you're fun, you're neat. Maybe you want to have a conversation about what we just talked about, but one-on-one. All right, so we'll do one more group prompt. And again, we'll take 1 minute of silence to discuss this. This is an action-oriented one. And I'm going to put this in the chat. Debbie, we might get to your question at the end about using Zoom get-togethers with neighbors during COVID or wintertime, because that's a good one too. But for now, what are you itching to do with what you've heard and thought about today, either as an individual or together with your neighbors? Basically, what do you have a plan that you are just starting to figure out in place a first step, or maybe a follow-up step for how you might neighbor in a different way. We're going to have 1 minute of silence, and then we'll talk about it together. Hillary.
Sure. I'm gonna focus more on maybe something I can borrow from my neighbors, because I am really bad for just trying to do it on my own, but asking for that helping hand, especially with some of the new neighbors we have too, because I'm connected with our others, but to make them feel welcome to our neighborhood as well. I'm gonna try that route.
Great. I've had a lot of success developing relationships by borrowing things from people. Janice, go ahead.
Maybe not where I'm living right now, but in future homes, I want to pay a lot more attention to the new immigrant families, and especially reaching out to the immigrants in my neighborhood who may be less hesitant, who may be more hesitant to reach out to me.
Are you thinking of immigrants as the perhaps most popular or most in need of engagement of people who might otherwise be marginalized? Or is that just, is that a group of people that's near and dear to you for a specific reason?
No, it's just from our conversations today, just realizing how isolated and afraid and maybe not knowing how to reach out to neighbors, immigrant families might be, so that to take the first step and really think more about, maybe they might want to get to know me, but they might be nervous about it versus normally just thinking they want to keep their distance. It's just from today, you said. So it's just from the conversations today in this group.
That's great. One challenge might be speaking the language or dealing with accents. So it's possible that you can find someone from a similar, immigrant communities tend to gather, especially in cities. So maybe you can find someone who's been around for a while that can be your liaison or your sidekick, and go and encourage and welcome people together.
I'm going to have a block party, just more of a coffee or something like that. In the next couple of weeks, it's going to happen. I have the invites already made. I just have to get out there and do it. So yeah, that's the plan.
Go, Hope, go.
Yes.
See thumbs up from some people in Zoom. By the way, for those of you who are wondering, this concept of a block party, from what I understand, it's mostly a North American concept. Other people might refer to it as a block social or just a get together. It doesn't really matter how many people come, as long as you invite the appropriate folks and no one feels like they're left out, or what you do or what you eat. Just the simple act of the invitation and inviting neighbors to get together for something is wonderful. Kudos, Hope.
I think I have kind of started this practice, spending more time in the front porch rather than being in the backyard. So I think it was just reassuring to hear that again. So spending more time in the front yard.
Well, if that's all there is to say for today, that's okay. Look at me, I'm just rhyming like crazy. I swear this is not intentional. Apparently my brain is just working in rhymes today. Oh, at least I amuse myself, if not amuse others that I'm around. Well, let's this official session goes for another 15 minutes. And for those of you who feel like you got everything that you need, great. I'm going to take a screenshot picture of the people who are around, because the ABCD Unconference folks like that. They like sharing that. If you are uncomfortable with me taking a screenshot of you right now, leave your video off If you want to be one of those people, you don't have to smile. I mean, we'll do a 3, 2, 1, and you can wave your hands or smile or do whatever you want to do. Well, look at this. We have 10 wonderful humans who are ready for a picture. Great. Okay. Well, let's do, I'm going to do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then you do whatever you like to do when you're taking a virtual picture. Ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, that's good. You all look great. Thanks. I think if those of you are interested, Debbie has brought up something which sounds pretty relevant for those of us who are far enough north or south, depending on your hemisphere. If it gets cold where you are and you want to continue to neighbor all year round, you know, a number of people might otherwise go into hibernation, or there are a number of people, depending on where you are and depending on who they are, who are still very COVID sensitive, even if the weather's warm or when the weather's cold. So Debbie's got this question about, is anybody using virtual get-togethers with neighbors, especially during COVID or winter? Would anybody like to talk about how they neighbor not in person, but either via email or through some video platform? What have you been experimenting with? What seems to be working?
Joel, can I add one piece to that I just
Sure.
thought about? Sometimes there are people who've moved away that want to stay connected with their neighbors, or people who are elderly who have moved into an assisted living. Now, obviously, there are issues around access to technology and being able to use this technology, but it is a way for people who have known each other for 30, 40 years or whatever, and whose circles may have shrunk a lot because they had to move, or because they can't do things that they used to be able to do. So it is another way to both create community, but also to keep community, because people who have been together for years, you know, are pretty connected. So the idea of using Zoom, even if it's just a few times a year, is, I think, interesting possibility.
So I wanted to add, on my block, we have some of our seniors who are not comfortable using Zoom, but we've managed to utilize like free conference call. So we do our monthly meeting on free conference call, and most of them are pretty comfortable in dialing in, and we stay connected in that way. We also try to have a holiday gathering, and we'll look for a venue that right now that's kind of large enough for people to space out and still safely kind of socialize. But also when we have bad weather, we also look for ways to partner and assist each other with, you know, removing snow and ice. And we actually bought a snowblower that is shared, and one of our neighbors will, you know, go around and try to clear everybody's walk. So sometimes people will check in and find out, hey, is he coming down this end? So we try to circulate our block list with people who are comfortable sharing their phone numbers so that they can reach out to one another, whether it's their email or a phone number, just to be able to ask questions and connect. If somebody hasn't seen someone in a while and they know that, you know, Miss Renee generally goes away this time of year, they may try to check in to make sure that she is actually away and that there's nothing wrong. But trying to make sure that people are comfortable with whatever mechanism you're using. But our group has definitely not been ready to try to transition to Zoom yet, but the conference call thing seems to satisfy.
I appreciate that, Vanessa. Not everything needs a video component. There are a number of things where audio is just fine and sometimes better than video.
Yeah, not everybody wants to be seen in their curlers and their head wrap or pajamas. So That's why I think some people just prefer, look, I'd rather just have a phone call than have you see me at this point. So it does have that advantage.
Hmm. Debbie, I'll say something that I've done with mixed success. There's a concept, actually my introduction to asset-based community development was through something called an offers and needs market, which is a way I do it with sticky notes on a wall where people write down, here's what I can offer to this group or this community, and then here's what I need. Ostensibly, it's just a non-commercial marketplace for people to get their gifts known and for people to get vulnerable enough to say, I need help. And then people can exchange. Now, that's great. And of course, there's a lot of stories and relationships that come out of that, even if people aren't actually matching offers with needs. I've done that online for my local neighborhood association. Where I live, there's about 1,500 people in my neighborhood, and we have a very active neighborhood association. I did that last winter during COVID and also during winter, where I am here, which is serious business. It was okay. And by okay, I won't really get into the details, but there are tools, there are especially ABCD practices that we can use online. And our neighbors, the people who are used to seeing in person, we can still either see faces or we can still do things online when it's not possible or not practical to do things offline. I also noticed Hillary shared in the chat a little while ago about using group chat through text, sharing information or jokes. Yeah, you just crack jokes with your neighbors whenever you feel like it, Hillary?
We usually make jokes at each other's expenses, or if we see something funny or there's something going on. I'll just use this as an example. There's this big dirt pile because we live in a new development, and it's kind of been bothering all of us. So we call ourselves the dirt pile estates, and we just joke about, things that come up. But yeah, we can use it to wish each other happy birthdays and stay connected. And if somebody's, going outside for a fire pit in the winter, and we share that on there and everybody can come out to join.
I would also like to share, I used to work with residential homes where people with disabilities and autism. And a lot of our folks were feeling very isolated, especially at the height of the pandemic. And we started doing a lot of, we did talent shows on Zoom where people connected. We did bingo. It was a great way to get people who were feeling, again, very, very isolated, not seeing people that they cared about. And it was really wildly successful. Folks really look forward to that Thursday night of, playing bingo, and then they even did karaoke. So it was, there are endless possibilities when we open ourselves up to what can be done with a platform like Zoom and others to get people to connect on a level that doesn't always have to be about the problems, but can be about how we can laugh and enjoy one another and learn about each other's talents. So it's just one of the things that I do think that, the platform does open us up to connect in spite of some of the things that we face.
Well, look at what we've done on Zoom today. We had a great conversation about neighboring. For some people, the things that we're talking about is old school. That's how they grew up. It didn't even need a title. But sometimes in the time and place that we live in, it's a little bit of a lost skill or a lost art. That's why the title of this session was The Sweet Art of Neighboring. I really think about it more as just an emotional, social thing than, okay, here's the 159-step plan on how to be a great neighbor. So much of this is intuitive, and either we can remind ourselves or remind each other that, as we were sharing earlier today, a lot of these things are just really simple. You don't have to go do giant acts of kindness, or try to get into a 2-hour conversation with people. It can just start with a 1-minute, hi, how are you? What's your name? We don't even know each other's names. Like, let's start with basic things. Like, now we know each other's names. So we can say, hi, Vanessa. And you can say, hi, Joel. I'm really grateful for everything that you shared. Obviously, unconferences are all about the participants, and the sessions are as good as the participants are. You all were wonderful with each other, with recapping and sharing together. So I'm just really grateful that we had this time to learn together, to share stories together, and to give some ideas that might grow into something cool with your own neighbors. And that's it. I mean, there's no official, I wave the wand or bang the gavel and we're done kind of thing. I mean, with the unconference, I can see some people who need to get going. So again, thank you everyone for your contributions, and hope to see you around the world of ABCD again.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great
Thank
session.
you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.